In your take, what do you think is the current conditions in which the US and Iran are operating in? It seems that while there has been rhetoric referring to a peace deal or talks or possibilities of talks, there's been a suspension, at least for now, as far as we know, even though that may not be what the US president says he's heard from the Iranian side, but he did welcome the silence. And there's also, of course, the attacks that we've seen happen over the weekend and then earlier today. And so in what ways do you think this represents the current situation in which both the parties are in and the likely steps forward that they're going to undertake?
Thank you for having me, Sana. I think one of the challenges that we face is that Donald Trump is so frequently rushing to make announcements. I think he's forgetting that he's the president of the United States and not in the business of breaking news. So he rushes and prematurely makes announcements that the deal is made and we have finished negotiations. We're just ironing out the details. And you don't see the same thing from the Iranians. For example, the Iranians are waiting for everything to happen before they make the announcement. So a lot of us and our expectations have been raised because Donald Trump has frequently said that I have a deal on the table, this is the greatest of deals, etc. And part of it is there is a conspiracy theory here in the US that the Trump administration, his family, and people near around him are using this war to play the stock market. So there are lots of big bets taken, sometimes to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, like 20 minutes before he says something on Truth Social. So basically what has happened is that they are stuck on 2 or 3 issues. One of the issues is that Israel will not allow the United States to lump the peace deal around the Strait of Hormuz and Iran with Lebanon. So so while Israel is willing to respect the ceasefire with Iran proper, it has absolutely not respected the ceasefire discussions to include Lebanon, and is therefore having a separate ceasefire discussions with the government of Lebanon, not with Hezbollah. And even there, more than 700 people have been killed since the ceasefire started with Lebanon. For the Iranians, they want 3-4 things, and Donald Trump is not giving them. They want the opening of the Strait of Hormuz or the blockade, but they want sanctions reliefs right away, and they are not willing to discuss anything when it comes to the nuclear issue. So there's nothing really decided. So the memorandum of understanding, whatever the drafts that the Pakistanis are sharing with Donald Trump and returning, basically says that both sides will open the Strait of Hormuz. There will be sanctions relief to Iran, and also the $12 billion that are now in Qatari control will be released to Iran, which Qatar has now declined. And so those steps have to happen, and then the Strait of Hormuz will be opened by the Iranians as well as by the United States. And of course, Iran is also looking for guarantees that there will be no invasion further afterwards, after they have surrendered the nuclear weapon. The enriched uranium that they have, about 1,000 pounds or over 400 kilos. So the only concession that the Iranians have made is that they're willing to consider the possibility of surrendering the 60% enriched uranium that they have to a third party, or to keep it in Iran under IAEA control or inspections. But Donald Trump keeps saying all the time that, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. I mean, that's not the kind of language you would see in any agreement. That Iran will never have. What does it mean? 5,000 years from now, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. So he is constantly playing. Donald Trump is essentially stuck with this problem that he realizes that he cannot go forward militarily. The utility of military strikes has diminished significantly. Plus, he has realized that in order to get a deal, he has to make financial concessions, which means releasing the frozen assets of Iran, plus letting Iran trade freely. And he has been so critical of Obama's JCPOA for enriching Iran with billions of dollars, which was just Iran's money, really. that he feels that he's going to be exposed to the same criticism that not only have you given a bad deal, you've got a deal which is worse than JCPOA, you are also giving money to Iran, but you're also letting Iran control the Strait of Hormuz. So he wants simple language. No nuclear weapons ever. Strait of Hormuz totally open with no tolls. That's all he wants to see on a paper. The Iranians are not dealing with simplicity. They are dealing with complexities. And now they have added an additional condition saying that Israel's incursions and its violence and its killing of civilians in Lebanon is essentially a violation of the existing ceasefire. So they're saying violation of the ceasefire on any front is a violation of ceasefire on all fronts. So this language coming from the Iranians, and there is also an internal coup going on inside Iran, which is that with each iteration of negotiations, you see that IRGC is gaining more and more control over the government and decision-making inside Iran. And the current set of leaders at IRGC are definitely more hardcore and more hardliners than the previous set. And they are not really willing to make any concessions on key issues, which is Iran's right to enrich uranium. And they want to have some kind of a toll on Hormuz. They are saying that either you give us that or let us charge an environmental protection fees if you don't want to call it a toll, which the Chinese have agreed to. The Chinese said no tolls, but they are okay with an environmental protection fund, which Oman and Iran will share. But the Iranians also want reparations for the damage that has been done. There are lots of rumors here in Washington that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner have proposed an alternative way of dealing with what has happened to Iran, which is they are floating a $300 billion fund, an investment fund, which will invest in Iran and rebuild Iran. And so basically Witkoff and Kushner will probably make billions of dollars just in commissions. But where is that money going to come in? It will be American taxpayer money, probably arm twisting of the Qataris and the Saudis, maybe even UAE, to pour in billions of dollars to rebuild Iran with Steve Kushner and Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff playing an important role. So there's an element of corruption also going on. So we are dealing with a very complex situation, which is confounding us because of the contradictory statements that Donald Trump is making. I wish, one of the things that Pakistan has achieved, which I find quite remarkable, is there is no leak from inside Pakistan on the negotiations. Nobody in Pakistan is telling us what is in the agreement so far in terms of as they carry the messages back and forth, which now the Iranians have actually stopped. So we are stuck there to see. Donald Trump does not have a military option. There are some people who thought that he was waiting for the Hajj to get over because the Saudis didn't want Iranians shooting missiles at the Hajjis. Now that the Hajj season is over, the Hajj is still in Saudi Arabia. They will be there for a month. But the U.S. is more open to resuming attacks on Iran. And the request that the Saudis had made may not be, as compelling anymore.
Right, absolutely. And these are important factors that we'll discuss further. But of course, like any other responsible negotiator, it is up to Pakistan making sure that whatever it is that the two parties are discussing remains in confidence. We've also been joined by Sylvia Baltic, who's the Managing Director, Special Eurasia. Thank you very much, Sylvia, for joining us and being a part of the show. I'd like your perspective also in terms of understanding when we take a look, particularly in terms of Israel's actions against Lebanon. Of course, Iran has been emphasizing that there has to be peace in the larger Middle East, and especially the ceasefire in Lebanon, in order to move things forward with the U.S. But there's also been more or less a difference that we've seen coming in from the Iranian side over the matter as part of the negotiations. And so in the middle, perhaps the issue of Lebanon wasn't coming to the forefront as much, or at least wasn't being reported enough. And then now again, we see that that's become one of the more central aspects of the discussion. How are you looking at the situation, and what does that mean in terms of where the U.S. and Iran situation is going to unfold?
Well, first of all, good evening. Thanks for having me. I think that since the very beginning of this negotiation, Iran was collecting the talks to the question, to the issue of Lebanon. Actually, it was not reported on international media, but Iran was very vocal about the violation that Israel was conducting inside Lebanon. And we have also to take into account how the Revolutionary Guard Corps and in general the Iranian government has evolved after this war. We saw that the relation with Hezbollah, they are not really ideological anymore. They have become more, I would say, security oriented. Indeed, we saw that both countries provided help when the other faction was under attack. We saw that Hezbollah from Lebanon attacked Israel, while Iran was attacked by Israel and the US during this war. And thanks to this intervention coming from Hezbollah, Iran was able to defend itself by concentrating its defense efforts, targeting Gulf countries, specifically US military installation in Gulf country and neighboring countries. Therefore, I think that the support and the relationship between Hezbollah and Iran provided the ground for the fact that Iran cannot really abandon Lebanon. Indeed, for me, it was quite surprising that the US didn't expect it. They already met they already met the US halfway by not mentioning Gaza. Actually, we know that Iran is one of the major supporters of Palestine, but Lebanon, they cannot really abandon Hezbollah and their priorities, their policies over there. In terms of what is going to happen, actually, it is not clear. President Donald Trump last week said that an agreement was largely finalized and that the US were slowly obtaining what was their final goal. On the other side, while Trump was mentioning the nuclear issue and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian authorities, specifically Foreign Minister Arakchi, said that actually they were not discussing both the Strait of Hormuz and the nuclear issue in the negotiation table, but they were just talking about ending the war. So the thing is, these contrasting statements, I think they are different. They differ because they are talking also to the internal audience. So I'm referring not only to the American and to the Iranian population, but also to the center of power inside the country. And so both leaders, they are referring to their to the stakeholders inside the countries, and because they are both under pressure. And when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, of the reopening of the Strait and the returning of the previous condition, frankly speaking, I'm not so convinced that the Iranian will accept it. And specifically, they recently, this month, they created the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, which is a legal body that managed the passage through the choke point and collected fees for the passage in yuan and cryptocurrency, bitcoins. And they also, of course, require the shipments who pass through the strait to provide information through an official email. They have also established an insurance for sanctioned countries, like, for example, for Iranian vessels, in order also to have an insurance in the case of an attack when they pass through the strait. So they're creating a de facto reality. And according to some analysts in the US, they have already collected quite an amount of money with the fees passing through. And with some countries willing to pay, they're creating a de facto reality, which will be very difficult to change given with the negotiation. So to be completely honest, if we listen just to the declaration, to the statements of both leadership of both countries, it is very difficult to believe that they are close to a deal.
Right, and Sylvia, in what ways are you also looking at when we see what's happening within the United States? It seemed that Mr. Trump, when he at least expresses what is going on with Iran, it seems that he's losing patience. There's also, of course, the matter of this conflict being perhaps dragged on for far too long than what was perhaps initially estimated by the United States, and there's the increasing aspect of how the war is becoming less and less popular within the United States. How then do you think that, given the current circumstances, given the pressures also of what Dr. Muqtadar was also referring to as the previous Iranian deal, how is Mr. Trump then going to be managing that at home and dealing with what is currently going on, especially Israel's actions? Does he have influence over that? Does the U.S. still have the kind of power that many experts seem to believe it does over Israel?
Clearly, they have. Indeed, Trump changed his mind after a security meeting before this weekend, because last week, as I already mentioned it, he told media that a deal was already finalized or nearly finalized, and then after this meeting, he's changed his mind, and we saw some strikes coming from both sides, from the Iranian side and from CENTCOM towards Iran during this weekend, and he came back with some tougher term to Iran, to the negotiation table, which is actually quite a problem. Why? Because in the case of the Trump administration, they can change their mind quite quickly, while on the Iranian side, when you come to the table with new requests, the bureaucracy inside Iran is really layered. So the negotiation team, they have to go back inside the country, and they have to go through many layers of agreement before coming back to negotiation table, and this prolonged, of course, the time needed to achieve a deal. On the other side, we saw that in April, the inflation inside the US increased at its fastest pace since the last 3 years. Nevertheless, interestingly, in an interview, President Trump said that he is in no hurry, that clearly he's aware of the fact that achieving a deal will decrease pressure on prices. For example, he mentioned gasoline, but he is in no hurry because a good deal must be achieved slowly. Therefore, I don't see him really like feeling all this pressure. We have also the Democrats stressing, of course, exploiting also politically the failure of Trump's military strategy towards Iran. They said that Iran has never been so strong before, that the conservative faction has been empowered, that and I will also add that they removed some of the leadership, which was, for example, Supreme Leader Khamenei, the father, was staunchly against the creation of a nuclear weapon. So he created a change in Iran that basically worsened the situation of relation both with Israel and with the United States. But Trump doesn't really seem, at least this is part of his character from a public perspective, he doesn't seem to feel so pressured. Clearly, he has to respond to Israel. Indeed, some major news we are emerged from Israeli news outlet. For example, last week, the Israeli news outlet stressed that I think that they fear that deal was really near, because they start saying that it was not good for Israel, that he didn't take into account Israel need. And now lately they shared the news that Qatar will offer a line of credit of $6 billion to Iran, and they were afraid too also of this outcome. So I think that there is a third party at the negotiation table which is not visible but is there, and of course I'm referring to Israel.